Hello there, my name is Klaus Hostel, and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today, I'm going to talk about an innovation killer, normative language. What is that? Well, let's dive right in. It should be done properly. Let's be realistic. We want to do the smart thing. Any of these sound familiar to you? They're arguments that sound reasonable, but they're based on a shared understanding that actually isn't shared, because they fail at the not test. And what is the not test, you might ask? Well, applications are a good place to find examples of the not test, because they do this all the time when people write job applications. I'm flexible, I'm hardworking, I'm a team player. Now, none of these are necessarily lies, but what if you insert not instead? Is it still useful information? I'm not flexible, I am not a team player, and I'm not hardworking. Now, granted, if somebody actually wrote that in an application, I would say, okay, interesting. That is really cool of you to say because we know how to work now. But the reality is, information should be relevant. It shouldn't be a qualifier. And being those things, being flexible, being a team player, being hardworking, those are more or less qualifiers for most jobs today. I'm going to give you two examples, one of where the not test fails and one of them where it doesn't. Because example number one, if you are a taxi driver and then you write, I have a driver's license. Well, that's kind of assumed, because if not, then it's really bad. It's a really bad idea to try to become a taxi driver. Now, you might write, I have my license, but I don't yet have my commercial license. Okay, that's fair information. Fair enough. So, but if you just write, I can drive a car, you kind of need that. It's a qualifier. It's not useful info. On the other hand, if you write, I am applying for the position as Chief Marketing Officer in your company. Oh, and I speak fluent Arabic. Okay, pretty cool, because you might apply for the position anyway, especially in a part of the world where Arabic isn't the norm. And just having that information is relevant. There's a difference between I speak Arabic and I do not speak Arabic. Both of them are useful. It's not that one of them is like necessary. So back to our original statement. What does this look like in practice? So when somebody says it should be done properly, if we insert the not test, that means the other person is, by assumption or by, what's it called? There's a nice English word I'm looking for. It's like by rationale, by reasoning. Then you should say it should not be done properly. So when somebody comes to you and says, well, Klaus, I like this idea you have, but I think that we should do it properly. And I say, okay, so you're suggesting I don't think we should do it properly? You think I'm going to stand there and say, you know what, Mike, we should not do it properly? Of course not. Let's be realistic. Well, let's not be realistic. No. We want to do it the smart thing. Oh, funny that. I do not want to do it the smart thing. Nobody says that. This is not a real conversation. Yes, theoretically speaking, somebody might say, we don't want to do the smart thing, but that's one of those, people playing devil's advocate because they know that they're fighting for a lost cause. Nobody says that in an actual business discussion. So it makes the normative statements, it makes them empty. It makes them useless. But even worse, it makes them combative. It makes them like, you want to fight because I'm positioning myself here, and if you're not against, then we need to discuss that because I'm saying you are against. It makes them personal, because the moment I say, somebody comes with a suggestion, let's be done in 6 weeks, I say, well, let's be professional about this. I'm implying that the other person is not professional, and of course they are. And even if they're not, they see themselves that way. We are the heroes of our own tales. So by saying that sort of thing, by using that sort of normative language, then I'm making it personal. I'm making it about the person. And to be frank, it's pretty insulting. When I go to somebody and say, I think we should do it this way, they say, well, it's fair enough if they say, can't be done, or we don't like that, or there are many reasons. But if they say things like, well, let's be realistic here. Well, thank you. I was trying to be realistic as well. So now we agree we're both realistic. Let's move on. Ooh. And it's insulting. It's ugly, especially if you don't know that you're doing it, because then it's harder to call out. Because sometimes that's what you're going for. Sometimes you want to insult people. Sometimes you want to be personal. Sometimes you want to get into a fight. It's when you say, so, My group stands for all that is good and pure in the universe, unlike you. Well, then you're picking a fight. That's fine. Sometimes that's the goal. But usually it's not. And that means when it's just misguided, you end up in these situations that are really hard to address. Because telling somebody, I get what you're saying, but the language you're using, kind of insulting, kind of problematic. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm just saying we should be professional, or we should do it properly, or we should be thorough, or all these sorts of nice but empty words. And that's tricky, even when it comes from a place of good intentions. Perhaps especially when it comes from a place of good intentions, because then you care about the other person's feeling, and you care about it when you call them out on their troublesome language. If it's somebody you don't like, you're just going to say, hey, you just wrote it this way to paint me as an asshole, but luckily, here's a mirror, asshole. Then there's no problem. That's rarely the case, though. So what can you do to do better? First off, you can avoid normative language. You can give reasons that are not about proper or about professional, or some of these these words that imply that something is good, and if you don't do it, if you don't agree with it, then you are non-good. You can avoid that. And when somebody else uses it, you can change it. When you see that memo, you can say, hey, could we change this? Could we do the language differently? When you sit in a meeting and somebody's saying, we're getting a proposition here from our sales team, they're suggesting that we double the amount of calls. It's fair enough to say, you know what, I think if we do that, our quality will suffer. But if you just say, well, we like our calls to be done properly, what does that even mean? Change it when others use it. And that also means don't take the bait, even though it's hard, because people might not even be normative on purpose. Maybe they just have never been told or educated in how language works that way. And that's for most of us. So they're probably not even doing it on purpose. Be tolerant. Forgive a little. Try to reframe by asking clarifying questions. When somebody says, Klaus, you suggest that, and this is a real life example, happened not too long ago. I was talking with somebody, it was a coaching session, and I said, you know what, I think that with where you are professionally, it might be a smart idea for you to write a book. And the person says, yeah, but I don't have a year. I said, I get that. But if you know somebody who knows a little bit about book writing, it's possible to do it quite a bit faster. This last book of mine took 3 weeks, rave reviews, and I'm not saying we should go there, but it can be done faster. And then the default knee-jerk response, well, okay, I hear that, but I want it done properly. Slap in the face. And there I said, yeah, there's one of us who's written 31 books and one of us who's written 0. So I find it a little bit funny that you're the one giving me the properly slap. Now, I didn't say that, of course, because there was no harm intended. I just said, okay, I hear you. Let's dive into that. What does that mean? What's this properly you're talking about? What would you like it to be? Well, I'd like to have time to do research and blah, 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 blah. Okay, good. How about if we wrote a different book? Okay. And then after that conversation was over, the person I was coaching said, okay, now I see how it could be done in a couple of months. I guess I'd never thought about writing a book that way. Thanks for that talk. Because I didn't rise to the bait, tempting as it was. I just instead asked clarifying questions. Now, what you can do on kind of a broader scale, wherever you are, whether you're the boss, you're in the middle, or you're at the bottom, a freelancer, promote a culture of non-normative language. Because after all, there's still plenty of ways to say no. I'm not advocating just saying yes to anything. That's not my point here. You can say we can't afford it if we do it that way. That's fair enough. You're saying we don't have the time to do it the way you suggest. Okay. We want to play it safe and minimize risk because that's useful information. Minimizing risk is not a given. It's pretty fair to sit in a situation and one person says, I think we should minimize risk, and another says, I think we should take risks. Those are both valid options. But if one of them says, I think we should behave professionally, very few people are going to say, you know what? I think we should be unprofessional. Because it just doesn't play, doesn't fly. The important thing is not to stop disagreeing. No, it's to not hide behind language and accept that normative language only works when we agree on norms. If we agree, for example, with the book writing, that faster is worse, then okay. If we don't agree on that, then saying it as if we do is just a bit of a douchey move. Forgivable, yes, but still not optimal. So if you agree on norms, then you can get away with normative language. But if you don't, and often we don't, especially when it comes to innovation. So with that said, I have one last thing to say. And I just said it before, especially when it comes to innovation. I just honestly couldn't remember if it was on the slide or not. Now I remember the final thing to say. Thank you.